2 minutes gone past the hour of 9 o'clock in the morning time is the song of the classic in the morning time. Good morning and welcome to this another episode of To The Point for today, the 19th day of the month of January. It's indeed a pleasure being here with you. I say good morning again and to my listeners on Classic 105.5, 105.9. I say good morning, and to those that have just joined us on GBN's television, Channel 7 and Channel 11, Channel 20 if you're in cable. Those of you that's via our Facebook feed or via our YouTube channel, good morning. I'm Joseph Cadore, you call me JC, and welcome to another episode of To The Point. My guest this morning is Redhead. He's no stranger to the GBN, no stranger to the network. Certainly, and this morning I will be engaging him in thoughts, checking in with him, teasing his mind, trying to get a little bit of what is it his plans are for the year 2021. Ron, my dear, say good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning, brother JC, and thank you very much. Good morning to all of the listeners, both home and abroad, and thank you for the opportunity.
I've seen over the last year you've spent much time ensuring that you remain well groomed, that COVID-19 didn't affect that element of your life.
Well, I guess it was a mask.
Oh, that was
to protect from the elements.
The mask to protect from the elements. Well, I really and truly, I would love to have that conversation about protecting from the elements. I can safely tell you, I'm exposed to it, but I'm used to it.
Yes.
I want to say good morning to you. Welcome to the program. Thanks for accepting the invitation. And I think it would be rest of me. I think I was told that we can say Happy New Year's up until the end of January.
That's correct.
So I shall say Happy New Year's to you and to your family.
Ron,
thank you. The question is, where do we start the conversation? I mean, there's so much that we can possibly talk about. But I want you to share your thoughts with me, and I'm assuming that you are privy to the story. It was a story that was in the nightly newscast last evening regarding a situation that's unfolding, and I hope not for too long though, with the vendors that's temporarily positioned at the car park of the National Stadium. Yesterday they were there, weekend, realizing tents taken down. Have you been following the story? Your thoughts on it?
I have been following the story, and I just want to empathize with the vendors. These are Grenadians who are plying their trade honestly and in a very transparent manner. It can't get, in my view, any transparent than what they do, and they are trying to make an honest living. And to be treated in that manner is totally unacceptable. The vendors are people that I have total respect for, not that I have any family member or someone that I know as a vendor in terms of a deep personal sense, but they are my friends. I spend a lot of time at the St. George's Vendors Market and converse with them. So I know some of the challenges that they experience, and it was quite unfortunate that the action would further compound. They're already in a difficult situation, and it was totally unfair in my view and unjust to operate in the context to which they did towards the vendors. These are groups that need total respect. They didn't get anything substantive in the stimulus package, and it was totally unfair that they were treated in that manner. I am following the story, and I would like to see the outcome. As you said, hopefully it is not too long.
Now, based on the story that was brought by Christine, one of our reporters, Christine and John, she intimated that the officials would have indicated that the issue of the tents, the return of the tents, should be resolved by today. But that by itself, tents or no tents, you sometimes get the impression, right? Because the reality is the saga with the vendors, it has been one that has been talked about and has been ongoing at different levels, whether it is where they are at the market square, but somehow it seems to be, some people get the impression that the story is almost like a revolving door.
Yes, as I said, quite unfortunate. I really would hope by now that government of Grenada and the line minister would have seek to develop a better relationship with the market vendors going forward. Of course, taking into consideration the context of COVID-19 and all of the economic and social impacts, these are groups that will require some assistance, not necessarily just the handout and the financial one, but they will need some level of comfort to be able to ply their trade in a peaceful manner, and of course try to get back to levels to which they once operated before COVID-19. So I would hope that going forward, because this is my honest belief, after looking at what the vendors market is supposed to be and looking to what we have now, I am not satisfied that enough thought and enough resources were given to help get it to the point to which it should be operating. I see and understand the struggle with the fellas from Jamrock and having to clear Jamrock, but I am noticing now that the young men, and no offense to them, many of them I know and have great respect for, they do what they do, and the most I would say to them is be positive and try to make an honest living. But they are occupying in an area sections of the vendors market. The purpose of the vendors market is for vendors to ply their trade. The RGPF, they initially intervened and broke down the shacks and the shops and all these other areas known as Jamrock. But the young men are still congregating there. If it is that you want to, or you're claiming that you want to fix a problem, you need to do it the full way. And I am calling for their intervention on the behalf of the vendors. I think that they want to ply their trade, having to separate some and put some in the car park of the National Stadium and have some there is not making any sense. And things are totally difficult for them. Some of them are operating behind booths and can't get sale. Of course, tourism has met a slump, so you could already know and position the impacts. What I would like to see is that a comprehensive conversation and plan comes out of this whole saga, because it is unfortunate. However, I do not get the sense that the authorities are working towards an amicable solution for all people involved, including the young men who in Jamrock, some of them have business spaces and they want to make a living just the same.
You can look at this twofold, Ron, the issue of the vendors themselves, which some may argue that it speaks to possibly the government's seeming lack of interest. We've had that conversation as to whether or not government has committed itself to the question of the issue of food security, the need for us to be able to feed ourselves, and its commitment to agriculture, because the vendors would be one of the facets of the whole scope of the agriculture industry. So there is that, and there's the issue of the young men, whether or not the government says they're committed to the growth and development of its young people. And I'm not getting into the specifics as to what happens within those environs. Maybe there's always room for change, but you sort of get the sense that what you hear and what eventually transpires is a tale of two different sorts.
Correct. I share that view, and the interesting thing is that I have good relations and respect for both sides of that conversation. Some of them I went to school with, some of the young men from Jamrock, and some of the vendors. On a consistent basis, as much as possible as I can, I pass with them, we talk, they express concerns for me, and we try to sort things out. This is how I operate, honestly. So I engage them. So I am aware of some of the key challenges. I've held, at least in the past, 2 visits when I served in the Senate to the vendors market, seeking clarity on some issues. I met with the management there. I got some information. I then presented at the Parliament in terms of a way forward, that it should get some money out of the Green Climate Fund to help upgrade it, because it was actually a tourism product, and it could have been, funds could have been able to go towards upgrading of and making it a climate smart sort of environment. Because currently there is an issue with the scent emanating from the market area around there. Something has to be done in terms of the drainage system and flooding. So I was making the point that funds could possibly be diverted towards any serious upgrade that might be required to the vendors market, and to make the environment comfortable so that the vendors can ply their trade, and that the business community in the long run can have, in a sense, the separation of the occupation of the sidewalks from the vendors. Make it and construct it in a way that the vendors can have maximum visibility, and that they can benefit in the end. They can lock a gate, etc., when time to leave in the afternoon, so that they can secure their produce, among other things. And you made this interesting point, that they do not only serve the purpose of the issue of food security, but they are playing a role in agriculture as well. So, in a sense, when the farmers produce their crops, they will have to take the crops if they themselves do not have the land and sell.
Right.
This is how the funds will be circulated or revolved around that sector. So, it's something to look into.
While we're on the subject of food security, only in recent times we've had the development story of Grenada having received its first shipment of poultry out of Belize. We've had over the holidays, and that's the one that blew my mind. Like, it's almost every Christmas that there's a shortage of eggs, and that's one I couldn't quite figure out. But we could probably leave that alone for now. But you suddenly get the sense, and it would be good to speak with the persons within the Poultry Association. But that set aside, the issue of Grenada being food sufficient, is there really any reason why our food import bill continues to rise? If so, what can be done and what should be done? How do we fix this?
Well, I don't have the exact answer, and I will be very honest with the people. But what I would say is that we need to reach to the point where agriculture is organized. For example, the acting political leader of the NDC, who is also the spokesman for agriculture, has made the point repeatedly. Farming in Grenada, because generally it is a subsistence level in terms of what they do, backyard little thing, or who have a land and so on. But farming has to become more organized. And I get the sense that the farmers' representative is talking that type of language to see where agriculture is not only seen as a dirty job, where you have a certain mud on your clothes and that sort of thing, but the need to organize it. So to get to that point, to solve the food security or food shortage problems. Trinidad and Tobago, our neighboring island, they are bordering on a food shortage situation. And this is largely because, and the Prime Minister has made the point, that we need to invest more in agriculture, not give it lip service, but invest in its development, in its organization, to be able to produce more and adequate for export and also local consumption. So the issue of the egg shortage, for example, and you're correct, 1 minute is egg, next minute it might be sugar. We just always seem to have some shortage of commodities which are widely or should be widely available, but in some cases it's always at a shortage. The question is why? And the question is, what and who are the groups and individuals responsible for ensuring that it does not happen? In Grenada, and my concern is, in Grenada, if something does not reach to a point of crisis or some extreme point, you can't seem to get any solution. This is unacceptable. And I empathize with the people who may be in the sector, involved in the sector, and is really trying to do an honest day's job in terms of poultry, farming, vending, etc., but can't seem to get to the point because we lack the organization.
On the issue of organization, your thoughts on the role of the MNIB, what they are doing or not doing?
Well, I'm very concerned with marketing board, and I would say that I have additional concerns. I'm glad you raised that point because I listened to the Parliament debate, and I want to commend the leader of opposition. I will do it personally, but I want to commend him publicly first. The issue being raised about the role the current chairman of marketing board is playing on the public accounts committee is important. Marketing board has just been accused of a series of scandals. Whether they are fact or not, I am not getting into that because I have no actual evidence in my hand to suggest that. However, how I understand conflicts of interest to be, and it is important that that is sorted out because this is not the only board Mr. Diali is on. He's also either a member or was or is the chairman of NAWASA, either a member or was or is the chairman of the CBI board. So conflict of interest exists. It's not to say that Mr. Diali is a bad man or a good man. You can't, the law doesn't operate on that premise. But what it sets out is the parameters to operate and not to operate. And if you are holding positions which seem incompatible, there exists a conflict of interest. So he is finding himself into what you may consider an ethical dilemma, and he has to do a noble thing. He must relinquish either the position in the Public Accounts Committee, on the Public Accounts Committee, or the membership as a board member on the other state-owned enterprises. It's clear in the law. It's clear that the government attempted to change the standing orders, and I'm concerned about that. So, marketing board is not functioning as it should, in my view, because the direction or the people in charge, the control, the way in which they want to make the thing, it's not compatible with what is going on in the economy. Marketing board has a role to play in relation to export and that sort of thing, and import. Now, if it is that we are having food shortages for whatever commodity, the buck should stop at them. The buck should stop at the Ministry of Agriculture as well, and the buck also stops at the Ministry of Economic. I can't remember the exact term. However, the buck stops at these various ministries. What is causing, or what is the reason why we are not seeing an advancement in the necessary directions of marketing board? I don't know, but it seemed to me to be an issue of leadership. Because if you have the right people in the positions, they will get the job done. So on that basis, I am questioning whether or not marketing board has the necessary leadership to move the board in the direction. And I'm not questioning Mr. Diali's competence or his ability to do the work. But what I am questioning is that there exists currently a conflict of interest with that board, and I'm not satisfied that we are getting proper reports as to why it is not functioning. So we are only left to speculate until and when we get concrete information on these things. Then we can, say, well, marketing board is not doing its work because X, Y, and Z. That is a serious cause for concern, and I'm glad you raised it.
And indeed, it continues to be an ongoing conversation. Just to tack back to where the conversation was previously, we're looking at the whole issue of agriculture and its sustainability, and we'll continue to question. We talk about reforming the industry, and we hear a lot about that. In your estimation, is it more about just injecting more capital into it? Or there are those who would argue that one of the challenges to agriculture is that of getting young people involved. Now, I remember when I was at school, one of the highlights of school, and I'm an old Palmer boy, one of the highlights of it is that in the little corner that we had there, little space, I think most schools had a little kitchen, a little garden. And even I remember during summer holidays, there were those we were scheduled, Joe, you have to go and water the tomatoes, water the garden during the holidays. But it's interesting why we say that when you get to secondary school level, and I don't want to beat on it because I remember, for example, when I was at school, and that would probably the interest waned a bit, in that agriculture was no longer a mandatory option for me. And I'm not sure exactly what happens within the school, but I know over the years, so persons like during my PP era, where really it's not mandatory, well, Papa Bunje, I am doing something else. Spanish, whatever the foreign language is mandatory, math and English, right? Some of the sciences are mandatory, but agriculture, which is supposed to be the backbone of our small economy, and you sometimes wonder whether or not the education system is fashioned enough to accommodate so that by the time an individual leaves school, secondary school, he has a reasonable amount of appreciation for what's happening within the industry and the sector on a whole.
Right, and you're totally correct. It is the lack of understanding and education that has contributed to the waning interest in agriculture. And let me tell you why I say I agree with what you stating there. Now, if you tell someone that the only job you'll be able to pursue in agriculture is farming, and you'll have to dirty your clothes, and you have to buy boots, and you have to run the end of cattle, and all these other things, to the modern student mind, they do not see the interest in that. It is not that they are not adventurous and don't understand these things, but they grew up on devices, they grew up on computers, laptops, that sort of thing, looking at television. Their interest now is more to something beyond. than just the basic agriculture and a sheep making noise and pig. So they don't see that. But if you say to them, in agriculture, you can be the soil testing scientist. I can't recall the exact terminology, but you can be that. You can pursue something in beekeeping. You can pursue something in another area that is not only focused on the traditional aspect of agriculture. And if the education system is positioned in such a way to say that it is not just teaching agriculture, but you are specializing in a particular area, then you will see greater interest. Scholarships, for example, must be given in this regard to help people pursue particular degrees in areas that we need. Because in the Ministry of Agriculture, I am certain there are positions that should be fulfilled, and we may not have the person on either. Right? These are issues that your education system should be looking at to say, okay, while we are turning out 10,000 business students over the course of 5 or 6 years, what we need to be turning out is more soil testing scientists or people involved in agriculture on a scientific level to ensure that we are preserving crops, to ensure that we are expanding opportunities and enhancing the sector in a more direct way. So education has a critical role to play. And that's where the question of organization comes along. Because if you have a plan at the agricultural level, you can then take that plan and tailor it to the educational level, which will feed back into the agriculture sector. And that is not happening.
And very often, even in the information process, very often in the very persons that's in the industries and separate industries, they're not allowed to see the linkages.
Yeah.
Do we make the linkage between tourism and agriculture? So we talk about agriculture for the tourists, those coming in. But what about agriculture for the local, for me, you, right? When we go to a restaurant, what is served? You sometimes you go to a restaurant or any in the supermarket and you see more bottled and imported drinks than anything else. That I know, Ron, is going to be a continuous conversation, but I think we both agreeing there must be a concerted effort to make agriculture, see that, as you said, as a business, and it's a viable, sustainable business that I don't just dirty my hands, but I can make an a livelihood, as there is in the U.S. You try to travel and you wonder, well, why is the food seems so cheap in the U.S. in lap and cut? You could go to one of the big the fast food and you get this, that. It's because, of course, and I know there are those who would reasonably argue that the topography with terrain does not necessarily allow for making it totally capital intensive. But I would agree, and I'm sure you probably would share your thoughts on that there are areas, though, that can be allowed for some capital investment, serious capital investments to it.
Correct. And the truth is, if we reimagine and reorganize, and COVID has presented a very important opportunity. Even the National Democratic Congress is in the mood and mindset of rethinking and reimagining where do we take the economy from here. We are talking diversification. We need to know exactly how. What will we do? Are we able or capable to set up the linkages? Are we able to redirect the education system to a more technical and skilled background, taking into consideration the availability of the jobs that we have here are still limited to the vast majority, rather, if you look at it, is in the tourism sector. The problem with that is that we still are limiting jobs to sector and are not spreading the thing throughout. So the whole question of reimagining where we need to go, that is a topical issue. I don't have all of the details, but I am certain that the experts, if they are listening, and if they understand the situation that people are facing now, they can give concrete suggestions on the way forward. So these are some of the conversations we should be having with the public in a serious way. Post-COVID-19, how can we rebuild, but rebuild better?
Rebuild and rebuilding better. 27 minutes gone past the hour in the morning time. It is to the point. My guest is Ron Redhead of the National Democratic Congress. We'll take a quick commercial break and we'll be right back. GBN Television News at 7, a pulse on all things Grenadian. Look out for our new features through expanded synergies with our media partners in Barbados, St. Lucia, Jamaica, Trinidad, and beyond. Capturing the latest in news, sports, weather, and entertainment. Credible, informative. Thank you for making us number one. News at 7, live, Monday to Friday on GBN Television, Channel 7 and 11. K105.5 and 105.9, Hot 98.5 and 98.7, GBN Television Facebook page and YouTube channel, and www.gbn.gd. GBN, with you anywhere and everywhere. Indeed, we're with you 24 hours a day. And welcome back to the point. It's about 29 minutes, 28 actually, and gone past the hour in the morning time. And my guest this morning is Mr. Ron Redhead of the National Democratic Congress. We're just going to go to the lines. The number 435-2041. We've lost that caller. Reminding you that you can share your comments via our WhatsApp platform as well as on our Facebook page, or you can call directly into the line, into the studio, 435-2041. Ron, agriculture, and we could probably exhaust the greater part of our lives talking about agriculture. COVID-19 is a topical one, and it has affected our life in more ways than we will come to appreciate anytime soon, really and truly. The way it has literally affected the economy, locally, regionally, and internationally. The way it has transformed our education platform, whereby now we have to embrace technology at a much faster pace. All being said, though, are you satisfied that enough is being done at all levels with the challenges that we face to ensure that we come out from COVID on the other side better than when we first entered this COVID period?
The truth is, no, I'm not satisfied that enough is being done. And it's not only at the level of government. Of course, I will get to that. They have their role to play in terms of the authority and the way forward. But the mindset of the people, I am not too satisfied that it has come to the point where we understand that what we once did before COVID has to change completely. And some people may say, well, it's the new world order and we're introducing and ushering a new age, a new dawn and so on. But that is a law of life, change. It's a law of life. And those who look only to the past will miss the future. So you can't just sit and say that it's not an opportunity. I think it is.
Right.
But I would like to see greater involvement of independent organizations. And this involvement is not only from a CSO standpoint. So I'm not only talking about civil society organizations, but I am talking about independent groups that form and champion things, that form and do things. I would like to see a greater level of that coming out of COVID-19. Taking into consideration that the reliance upon a central authority, government, to do everything is not making any sense. And as we saw when the stimulus package was announced, government's ability and reach, whether deliberate or otherwise, is very limited because resources are scarce. And in an environment of scarce resources, the management of it will have to be almost precise to ensure that you get the required outcomes. But you need a greater involvement of the people, not so much the reliance upon government, but the people and groups to take us to where we need to be. And I don't see that.
When you make mention of the people, there's a caller online. Classic, good morning, your live.
Good morning, sir. How are you today?
I'm wonderful, thank you. Go ahead, your contribution, please.
Yeah. Things are in Grenada is very expensive, especially the provisions, like the yams, the potatoes, the, dashins, tanias, everything. It's so expensive. You cannot make a good meal out of it because it's so expensive. The flour and the rice yield more, so people are going to buy that, which is not so good for the health. But the problem is, Grenada have a lot of hills, so it's hard to farm, for big farming. And, with the farming, it's long time ago. People used to work together like maroons. Like you come by a Saturday and a Sunday, and people, you could get more out of your money because what they do, somebody will be cutting the bushes down, and somebody will be raking it up. Somebody will open up the holes, and that's for free. So you could have catered better. But now everything is so expensive, and it's hard to farm on the hills. And because if you get somebody to go and work for you, and you have to pay them like $70 a day, it's not profitable. That's the problem with things in Grenada. Everything is very expensive, and that's why. If we could get it cheaper, it will be better for everybody. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
A good point, caller. The ease of doing business. I think it's a serious burden on small businesses in the country, and especially the farmers or the farming community. The caller made the important point of the cost of production, so to speak. And the factors of production, which you will have to take into consideration, it is not at ease. But for the farmer do not have a large capital base, can't go to the lending institutions and get any serious level of capital to start ventures. And it is a risky business because of the durability of the products, etc. You can die, you can have disease that could just spoil the whole thing. So the investment is a big risk. So they don't get the necessary capital. So this is the role that government must play, taking into account that you have the private financial institutions. They have their role to play in terms of injecting capital, etc., when it is necessary to businesses that are more viable in that sense. But the government's role now must be to come on board with the farmers and give added assistance. Not only saying, well, we will give them 10 million more here and give them 10 million more to build a farm road and so on. Yes, you can build the farm road, but the underlying conditions to which the farmers are operating still remain. Whether the road fancy, it paved, it is not going to make a significant difference because the original problem, the one below the plaster, right? That wound is still left unchecked. So, in my view, having a direct, organized attempt and plan to bring the agricultural sector to a modern sector is important. And bring it to a modern sector in the context of small island developing states is even more important. So we are not going to hang our hats where our hands cannot reach, but we are going to achieve or set up achievable goals to be able to move to that direction. But the critical part to it is the organization of the agricultural sector. Unless you don't have that, you're not going anywhere in terms of the direction and movement of the agriculture.
And many would agree, because at the end of the day, they would say it comes down to structure. There must be a plan, a national plan that guides what do we need, what should be planted. How many farmers do we have in Grenada? Where are the lands located? What crop is best suited for their terrain? Because that's a challenge. Listen, a guy wakes up, he will wake up and his father been planting corn all his life. So he figured that corn is the best thing to plant. When the reality is that corn may not necessarily be the most adaptable thing for the terrain. So that conversation, it must be nationalistic. We talk about our topography. Listen, we have hills. I've seen some places in India, and you wonder, well, okay, so they embrace if your terrain is hilly, then you use different methods. Whether it's that of terracing, whatever it is, to that it can accommodate. That is the holistic conversation that must be had. What happens here is that a guy decides, you know what, I'm going to plant tomatoes, and that's all I want to plant. And when that's over and done with, it's that for them. And then tomatoes is in abundance for 2 months, lap and cut, and then thereafter it goes from $2 for a pound, $7 now.
Precisely. And then everybody wants to plant tomatoes, and then the whole fight and struggle for access to markets now emerges. And then marketing board is not intervening, because marketing board in a sense encourages the competition, because it competes along with farmers in a sense, and vendors in a sense. So you have a compounded problem upon one another, which is not being solved only at the government level and is not being looked at in a deep way, but is lacking that level of leadership and organization that is required. So that is my personal view, and I think that is the view of the National Democratic Congress on the matter.
WRB. It's a saga that continues to unfold. Some have argued it's an easy case, but before we get to that, let's just engage this caller that is on the line. Classic, good morning, you're live.
Yeah, good morning, gentlemen. Brother Redhead.
Yes, go ahead, please, sir.
Agriculture, I think, like from the big agriculture is from beginning. You have to start from home. Now, if you don't go up in agriculture as a kid, from a parent's home to love agriculture, you won't love agriculture. Can you somebody go plant now and repeat now, or catch money at the same time? It's something you have to mold and take care of. In my school time, we had agriculture garden in our school time. In my time in the 60s. Yeah, and it's still going on still in the area where I come from. So if you don't go up in agriculture in your home, but people tell, they go back in a way that they don't want to go back, let them go back in things what they used to do in the past. Because agriculture is a filthy thing, and they want to turn to be doctor and lawyer and this and that and whatnot. So people get agriculture to the fullest, but the land which export had highwood right now, in the past was planted land by our foreparents. But people neglect it, and you go high woods. All if you go on green, empty land, which is agriculture in the past years. Nothing on cocoa and banana, nothing type with vine, and nobody working it right now. So you have to go back to agriculture. You have to start agriculture in school. People have 10 subjects, no agricultural science in that. 15 subjects, no agricultural science. They mean they will work and buy what they want because they have the money. But in the days gone by, agriculture was based in every home. Survival. People don't have children, but they haven't got money, but they have food to eat.
Okay.
Food was the first priority in the days gone by in agriculture. Everybody have a backyard doing the garden, they planting yam, they potato, this, that, and the other. But things changes, they work for the money now. They buy what they want, what they want.
Okay, thanks a lot, sir. And I think the caller just sort of underscores the point that we have been making, that it has to be a structured approach to it. So nothing is wrong with studying law. Nothing is wrong with wanting to go into marketing. But if I'm going to go into marketing, then I have to understand maybe I would also want to do international law on the marketing that allows me to understand the different markets, new opportunities, niche markets. How do I tap into those markets? If I'm going to tap into those markets, what do I advise that you sell to those markets? There are emerging markets in South America, in Asia, but what you going to sell to them? Are you then going to send beer to Pakistan? No. So those linkages, obviously, it must be made. We will want you to touch on the issue of WRB, and it has become a topical issue. The question of where the money came from, and coupled to that now is the ongoing saga of the 4% that has been government is saying, listen, I just had to haul out 63 million US. Listen, that 4%, I want to pay you, but I can't do it now. Your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts, first off, let me just, from a Grenadian standpoint, thank the investor, WRB, for their service. I am not getting into details whether they were good or not, but the record will show that what the company came from to what it was when they left definitely was something better, and for that we are happy. We understand that they invest throughout the Caribbean and is reputable in that instance. So we thank them very much for their service and assistance and investment into Grenada's energy sector, and wish them all the best in their future endeavors. Second to that is the whole issue, as you rightfully said, with the saga emerging after. Now, I am not going to get into the details with Grenadian. I think that has been exhausting throughout the public in terms of the debate, whether it was the government who caused this situation in the first place and should it have been avoided. So I think it should have been avoided. I am clear on that. I want to say to the three ministers who I hear from regularly on the government side talking about WRB and Greenland, I think they are telling stories and they need to just stop, right? There's no nicer way for me to put it on radio and television, so I will put it like that. They need to stop telling stories and tell Grenadian people the truth. What I would like to see emerging out of this discussion now is, where do we go from here? Of course, the conversation of the money, where you got it, is critical because it will say whether or not Grenada has the ability to do certain things going forward. Because we operate in an environment of limited or scarce resources, to take $200 plus million to invest in something, you have to be sure or reassured that you're going to get back something in return. Now, Grelec is a profitable company, and what we would like to see and hear from the government is, where do we go from here now, going forward? Is it that the government is saying to the workers that they are unable to pay them the increase only for a temporary period and will resume, or not? But quite frankly, this issue involving payment to the workers is for too long being just kicked down the road. It is not used as an election ploy and pretense, etc. It is now being said that we can't do it. Why you didn't do it before? And in all honesty, during COVID, the workers were some of the hardest hit groups in the country. And in my view, it was a disrespect to give only $50 million in a stimulus package and could be able to bring a situation with WRB and the government of Grenada to the point where it reached the courts and we lost the case and have to spend $200 plus million EC to sort it out, and we are able to meet an agreement with the workers of a meager 4%. It is a disrespect to the labor community, both here in Grenada and in the Caribbean, I believe, and the government of Grenada needs to search its soul. This is not about having a conscience for not the government's inability, because it proved time and time again when the government is prepared to find resources to give out monies to buy door and window and fridge for people and so on. They can do these things, but when it comes to someone's need, when they have worked and sacrificed for many years in the country, they can't seem to find the resources. So I understand that there are two issues, but they are coupled because it takes into consideration the government's priorities in relation to buying the shares in Grenlec. Of course, it reached to that point. The court had to enforce it, but being unable to give the workers their just, that is a problem to me.
Your argument of the day, as it relates to government's inability to pay, is it hinged on the fact that you think, given what we've experienced during the COVID-19 pandemic, and that is clear, that is universal? Or is it that you're saying the argument is, well, if you can find 63 million US, which is US, way beyond the 4%, if you could find that, then certainly, because you've been saying for the longest while, you can't afford to do it, then with little or no warning, you were able to, wherever it's coming from, that's a different conversation. Is it that you're making that argument that maybe then go to the same source and get the money that's needed, or is it that you assume that they really can't based on the current economic construct?
Well, first off, in relation to that, we can only go as citizens with the information that we are getting. And that's where I made mention to the importance of the Public Accounts Committee at the parliamentary level to be very independent and headed by opposition mainly. Because we need the truth. I am sick and tired with the stories. I'll give you an example. I have in my possession, and I worked with Dr. George Vincent, former senator for the National Democratic Congress, along the lines of, I have a document which suggests the minutes from the Public Accounts Committee, which involved the missing money for the Coast Guard, the Grenadian Coast Guard, and the missing money for the refurbishment of the Carlton Home. Now, I am not looking to make a hysteric issue about it, but the point is, these are resources that comes to the country and in a sense goes misappropriated. Almost it vanishes. And in this context, with the purchase of WRB, it emerges just out of nowhere. Government announced a very large capital expenditure or budget. The question was why? We were unable to achieve even 50%. Why do you think we'll be able to achieve such a massive amount, 303 million EC dollars? And then today, they just have out of the blue, and they claim first was savings. I don't know how you could get savings and your revenues are down, right? And next we're hearing it was loans and grants and so on. So the stories are not adding up. For me, what I would say is you must separate the issue of the payment to the workers and the payment to WRB for the majority shares. But you must not separate it on the premise or basis of the government's priority, taking into consideration that the workers negotiated this in the past and therefore was subjected to receiving that benefit, irrespective. So the government knew they had to do it. So to make that excuse is quite ridiculous in my view. And it only speaks to the government's priorities. They really don't care about the important issue, taking into consideration workers who are hardest hit or some of the hardest hit groups during COVID-19, and they should be enthused to give in that regard.
Classic, good morning. You're live. Your contribution,
Hello,
please.
good morning.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Very interesting. I just want to say that in the NDC reign in 2008 to 13, I haven't heard about any increase paid to the workers. But lo and behold, in 2013, when the NNP administration came in, they paid back pay to the workers, increase, and so on. And I mean, it's just very unfortunate that COVID coming now, and look at the state, or where we are now today. And what the government is saying is a deferral. They're asking the workers. I mean, in the light of the circumstances that we in now. And I believe that putting the Grenlec, the repurchasing of the Grenlec, we cannot put it on a balance with salary increase because it's capital investment and recurrent investment for increasing paying any increase in salaries. Because every month you have to find the money to pay. But this is a one-off thing with Grenlec, and I believe that in the Mr. Redhead, I heard you talk about going forward with Grenlec. This is good. But I believe that we need to think about the country, and sometimes don't politicize the situation. And we listen to the facts, because I could tell you, I'm not going back on it, but 1994 when NDC made that deal with WRB in the sale of Grenlec, it was a real disaster to the country. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you very much.
Well, first off, let me say good morning to the caller, and I respect your opinion. I have no issues there with that. You are free and entitled to give it, but it's just that during the NDC there was an increase paid. That could be fact-checked. I am not holding it to my chest. I'm not going to argue with that. But there either was one or there were two. But that could be fact-checked. Now, we are not arguing, as I said, that Grenlec and deferrals are one and the same. As I said, you need to separate it because there are two different issues. However, what you are putting it into relation with is the priorities of the government, taking into account that this whole situation with Grenlec should and could have been avoided. That is the message. I was not there in the NDC government in 2008-2013. While I am a member and I understand things are carried over, I have to bear that burden and responsibility, and I gladly do so, and I understand it. But I was not there, so I cannot comment too much on the issue of payments and all these other things, and I wouldn't spend any time trying to beat a table over that. But what I would say is, what we are facing now in the present and where we will go in the future is very important for me to comment, whether I am NDC or not. I am Grenadian, and I have a right to share my views, of course, and the views of the general public in relation to this. The unions are also speaking the language I am speaking here this morning. So to say that I am just saying one and it's not the case is totally false. The government has a responsibility and an obligation to bring to the people the transparent actions of what it does in terms of where it got this money from to buy WRB majority shares, and can't or is in a position of not being able to pay workers, something which was negotiated for.
A caller on the line. Classic, good morning, your life.
Good morning, Joe.
Yes, go ahead, please.
President, good morning to Mr. Redhead also. Mr. Redhead, keep carrying the torch. I'm a foundation member of the Congress, so keep going. Let me just go right up to the where the conversation started this morning about the problem with the vendors. And I want every Grenadian to listen. How many of the recent issues that have been problematic, that the government is not solely responsible for the fact that there have been problems? Every time they have to go back and say sorry, they have to revisit. I mean, come on. We definitely need better. And Joe, you mentioned something about the agriculture, and I like that. You said when you were growing up about, even though you had no space in town, that you had this. I am wondering why at all of our schools, well, cocoa and nutmegs are now the main crops that we export. There shouldn't be a cocoa tree or nutmeg tree, and then the history, the story, like you said, the science, all that is involved, so that we can have our children getting accustomed, so they can prove, they can choose to pursue agriculture. Have a good day, you gentlemen. Right.
Thank you very much, sir. We're keeping our eyes on the clock. It's about 8 minutes onto the hour, Ron. Continue, you're saying.
Yes. Well, the caller there is making a very important point, and it speaks to what I have been raising. I am very concerned in Grenada today that if something is not at the point of a crisis or a tipping point, or if you don't put somebody on blast publicly, that you are not getting results, you are not getting justice. This is a serious concern. And look, I have no personal qualms with Prime Minister Mitchell. And let me put it this way. I think he was effective in being the leader of the NNP for so long. Politically, that's an excellent achievement, right? No politician who is serious about the politics will underscore that. To be leader of a party for so long, on challenge, you cross opponents, etc., that's good. However, when we compare the advancements in the country for such a long period of time, holding the reins, I think there are a lot more things that should have been done that were not. And again, it comes back to the point, if something is not extreme, it can't get solution. The road have to fall in Moline to fix. The dump have to burn to be able to sort it out in a different way and modernize it, etc. These are issues in the country that is aggravating people. And when we speak about it, when the workers can't get their payments, but the government is boasting and bragging that it brings WRB to court and it lost the case for Grenada, but it was able to buy back the shares and spend millions of our dollars. And we can't seem to really benefit from these things, either immediate or medium term. It is a cause for concern, and we must speak about it.
Indeed, is a cause of concern. We're running out of time. There's a school of thought that would suggest that while there might be challenges, and I guess the government officials, the economists, the people that crunch them the numbers, they would be best to deal with that. But some of our, listen, why not give them the 4%? You give civil servants, you give the workers, the public workers, their 4%. And it's that very same 4% that goes right back into the economy. It's a spiral effect right there and then. You're talking about getting a catalyst, getting the economy going. Some is saying the 4% is going to do just that. Your thoughts?
And you're totally correct. It is an injection. So in a sense, it is a stimulus in its own self and its own right. In that, if the workers, the public workers, get that money, they are going to be able to pay the little debts that they may have incurred during the COVID period, buy more things. Christmas was coming up, they would have been able to spend more for the season, of course, but the economy would have been able to get more out of the workers had you done that injection. In other words, the very principle that we are faced with, because taking $200+ million and purchasing shares, to the extent that we are still uncertain because we do not know what may happen in the future. Let us say, God forbid, we get a natural disaster, right? And Grenlec itself has to now invest tremendous amount of money because government has majority shares. What will be the conversation around that? How will we be able to invest and bring the thing back up to the standard that it once was? These are the concerns. So it's not just about buying the shares. So I'm a bit disappointed with the method that is being used to tout as economic injection. Because even the argument of renewable energy, we could barely survive right now with non-renewables. I'm not saying that we're not supposed to go to renewables. I believe we should. Wind, solar, hydro, etc. That's important. That's for the advancement. However, let us try to build within this particular time, build sufficient knowledge, information, some dexterity to be able to protect ourselves. So going into the future, what happens if we get a problem with the sun? I'm not a scientist, but what happens if we start to get limited rainfall and or the wind is not blowing as it should? These are concerns that we must also factor in. So we maintenance of some of the equipment, etc. So just talking about you're going to get to that point, it must be realistic, and it must also take into consideration the people's involvement. I would have liked to see, honestly, that government use a method to sit and discuss with WRB in an open and honest manner. I have participated at the Trade Center in numerous public they were organized by the government, I believe, when public consultations on the drafting of the law. WRB was there. They made representation. They called on the then Minister of Energy, Minister Gregory Bowen, to do not go down that road. The chairman was there. I saw it. Minister Gregory Bowen sat straight-faced. These are things that could have been avoided. They allowed the situation to get to this point, and unfortunately, as usual, or as per usual, the workers of this country, the ordinary working people, always have to bear the brunt of that responsibility. When they do their things, they always have to sacrifice. They always have to be the ones responsible for loans, bad payment, bad debt, whatever it is. This thing is unfair and unjust, and the government must search its heart and try to give the workers something.
Fair and unjust, the government must search its heart. The final words there from my guest this morning, Ron Redhead, a representative of the National Democratic Congress. And Ron, it's always a pleasure speaking with you. And again, I say thanks for accepting the invitation, and thanks as always for being a good guest on To The Point. A minute on to the hour of 10 o'clock. That's where we leave this conversation for now. Reminding you, of course, that we do this To The Point every day. Tomorrow, we'll be having, which is Wednesday, my guest tomorrow would be the Honorable Minister of Tourism. That would, as we discuss all things tourism within the construct of a COVID-19 period. Well, this is where I say my goodbye to you for now. Peace and love. JC loves you. And the man, the golden child, that comes on to take you through the next 2 hours until lunch. Until then, I want to encourage you to continue to be the best version of yourself. And remind yourself daily that no longer shall I and will I accept mediocrity as a way of life. Today I determine I'll be the best version of myself as I can be. Peace and love. JC loves you. I'm out of here. Thanks for listening to The Point.